What's up, everybody? I just wanted to come here today and talk about, obviously, the situation with WCB. It hasn't been the best, of course, but I've seen a ton of negativity on the timeline, and we want to focus on the positive, what we can come back to, what can we be excited about in the future. And I really think it's important to kind of reestablish the fact that, Women's Rocket League is great. Women's Rocket League will continue, keep on keeping on. Nothing's going to stop it. Nothing's going to hold it back. And so I wanted to get together with a few of the prominent members from the WCB who've been playing for a while. You know them. You've talked to them. They've been huge in the scene. So we have Courtney, Slumpii, and Techo, who's been an admin behind the scenes since season 1. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to run through that. We're just going to talk about what we think is good for the future. Can't wait to have them, and we're going to go ahead and bring them on now. I'll let them introduce themselves. We're going to have some fun. Hopefully you guys will stick around for the chat just to see kind of how everything's going to go and what we're hoping for the future of Women's Rocket League. Hi guys, how's it going today?
Yeah, it's going good, thanks. It's going good.
Pretty vibe-tacular.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go ahead. We'll just go around in the fun, good old-fashioned box method. So we're going to go clockwise. So Courtney, I'm going to start off with you. Go ahead and introduce yourself, say a few words, and of course talk about what WCB has meant to you and kind of how you've progressed within that space and having that that competitive outlet.
Hi everyone, my name's Courtney, and I play for Genji. Hold on, Genji Mobil 1 Racing Black. Okay,
Sheesh.
I was the MVP last season, and WCB it means a lot to me, just because it's kind of brought me out of like quitting this game multiple times, and swear I've met I met one of my teammates, Bella, and she's the GOAT. Known Kira too for a long time.
Me next?
Yes.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Slumpii, and I play Rocket League and WCB and loads of other tournaments, to be fair, nowadays, for Team Endpoint. And yeah, I mean, without the WCB and the women's scene in general, I wouldn't be here. I probably would have quit, just as Courtney said. It's given me a ton of opportunities that I hadn't had before, and I'm eternally grateful for where I'm at, to be honest.
Hello everybody, my name is Techo. I'm the head admin for WCB. I've been in other stuff along the lines of WCB, like other stuff apart from being head admin, but that's mainly what I'm known for in the scene. Apart from that, I've just been here trying to help out the women's scene grow and make it better, and also, of course, having a great love for Rocket League.
Yeah, and I think the reason we're all here is we all actually do love Rocket League, right? Like, even if you said you guys were quitting, I think we've all thought about that and thought those thoughts before. But even for myself personally, who doesn't touch the game a lot anymore, every time I come back, every week or two and, get a grind session in, it just puts a smile on my face, right? It's just one of those games that keeps on giving. And it's why this is so important as well, right? Because we've had this competitive scene established for quite a while. Rocket League is going on, 7 years old now?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, we've been here for a while. We plan to stay here. Obviously, there's some bumps along the way. Losing to bots in 2v2s is never fun, but just get good. I think that's more of a skill issue. Also, obviously, if I can lose to AI, that's kind of a problem. So. But
it happens.
It's been a bumpy road. This is kind of another one of those bumps in the road, and I wanted to go ahead and ask you, Slumpii, because we kind of ran through what we were going to be asking pre-show, and I got a solid no comment from Courtney. So I just wanted to see, just to kind of give everybody some hope here. Have you talked with Endpoint Brass? Have they told you that they're kind of committed to the women's scene for the long term? Is there anything that they've kind of given you nugget wise that, hey, even if WCB doesn't go on as it is right now, that y'all will still be supported and they're still going to be looking for opportunities and potentially, going to try to create opportunities for y'all?
Yeah, so when I heard about the news, obviously, I immediately had a meeting with Endpoint ownership. Because, I was like, oh my God, there's always a possibility that you could be dropped or something could be changed because quite frankly, we're contractually obligated to play in a league that no longer is functioning, right? But they have been incredibly supportive of us. They literally just said straight up, 2 minutes into the meeting, they were like, "This doesn't change anything. We're going to continue to support you." And in general, with the scene, they've had talks behind the scenes about being open to like co-ownership with other orgs if that's the way things wanted to go. And I don't think that they plan on like changing that at all, because they know that even without WCB, our league is going to exist regardless. Like, you know, the scene won't die out. There's too many players and too many teams and too many orgs invested at this point for it to just die out. That's just crazy if that would happen. But also, we play in tournaments outside of that. We played at Insomnia LAN, which is like a big LAN in the UK last year. We came 4th there. And we're doing that again this year in, I think, April. So we're doing tournaments outside of that as well. So it's kind of broadened our opportunities. So even if women's scene wasn't as active as it once was, we can still do things.
And I mean, that's certainly good to hear as well, just because, and I mean, that's probably a topic for later as well, you know, talking about co-ownership. We'll get to that. But I really love hearing that, just the fact that there's that support there. And of course, like the main thing that I always try to tell people, especially when, you know, you have a lot of detractors, a lot of outsiders, a lot of things along that nature, that just aren't really positive towards our scene or, you know, other women's esports teams and other leagues. And I think this is important because they don't realize it's a developmental league. They're like, why does this need to exist? And I mean, there's a ton of factors and we could really go into that, but it's really a developmental league. And so when you're playing those outside lands, it doesn't mean that you can't play RLCS calls. It doesn't mean you can't do any of that. It really just means, hey, these people have been marginalized just because, you know, especially me being 31 years old, I was born in the 90s. Like, if you were a girl that played video games, it just didn't happen that often, right? Like, you weren't allowed to, or you weren't even told really how to kind of go about that. Or if you played shooters, you were a man and all that fun stuff. So especially growing up in the age that I did, I think it's extremely important to see that support and to realize I just need everybody here to talk about the fact that it is a developmental league. It's the reason that everybody's here. You're trying to reach the top. And the end goal of all of this is to just have full integration, right? Like, yeah, that's really the end goal of all this. Like, the end goal is to get everybody good enough to where this doesn't need to exist anymore.
Yeah, like, honestly, if in, you know, a few years' time we reached a point where the women's scene just wasn't needed, I'm cool with that. Like, that's fine. Like, we don't need to have, orgs wouldn't need to have, you know, women's teams and then open teams. You would just have a team. And that's what teams are starting to do. I think Evil Geniuses in Valorant maybe have a female player. I know in Rainbow Six they have one of the rosters has a female coach. It's starting to happen, at least a lot more than it used to. And I think that's credit to leagues like this. But yeah, I mean, eventually the goal is for this to just not exist or not be needed.
Right.
But I think when people say, oh, why does this league exist? Like, you know, they're not at any disadvantage. If it didn't need to exist, it wouldn't, you know?
Yeah.
And it clearly does exist because it's needed.
Yeah.
I agree.
Love that coming in hot, of course, with the I agree. Is there any other breakdowns, any other thoughts you have about that, Courtney?
Yeah. I compete in both RLCS and WCB calls. I actually do both with the girls. Last season I played on 2 different teams, and now I have 2 players from the same region as my teammates. It makes it a lot easier to do RLCS quals. Like, we grind incredibly hard. The girls and I are normally pushing 100 past 2. Like, it's just proving that people do want it, and there is the safe space that is needed. Because I've seen the brunt of the comp scene. I've seen the worst side of it. I've seen the worst people. I've seen some nice people. I've seen some worse people, and it's understandable if people don't feel comfortable playing in places where they pretty much feel uncomfortable. Like,
yeah. And I mean, I've seen a ton of players, obviously, on Twitter talking about the kind of state of ranked right now, the state of everything else. Hasn't really been a very positive experience, especially for scrims with teams like y'all. So it's important to have that space, of course, to where y'all can scrim together, y'all can grow together, but y'all can also kind of get that investment from your orgs to where Courtney and Slumpii, I don't know if y'all can talk to this. Have y'all ever scrimmed your other rosters as well, the RLCS rosters, and had the time to go ahead and work that out?
I'm not trying to get my butt whooped, and it's just not worth it for them, in my opinion. That The Gen G boys are absolutely nuts. I mean, they just won an RLCS major, like, and they take their business very seriously. I don't want to take away any of their time.
Yeah, I think for Endpoint and other teams that have RLCS teams, it's a little bit different because obviously they're not like at Gen G level. Like no org that is in WCB has an RLCS team that's at that level. So for other rosters, it is more worth their time, and it is something that we do have planned. And I know that Williams have been doing it at least a couple of times, so it's not out of the question. But yeah, like I think it really depends. And again, I didn't want to waste.
Yeah.
I didn't want to waste their time if they just completely whoop our asses or anything like that. That wouldn't be great. But you know, I think it can, in general, long term, if you want to improve the women's roster, it's a great like kind of shortcut to do it.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. So, Techo, obviously that was more org focused. That was more kind of upfront. So I wanted to ask you about this because, you know, you've been an admin of the league for the head admin of the league for quite a while now. You've been there. You've been in the weeds. You know, you've had administrative properties where you've had to pause games. You've seen some drama, of course, happen this season. Definitely drama happened in previous seasons. So, as far as copying the RLCS format, do you think this was correct for the growth of the scene with, like, you know, the Swiss into the qualifiers into everything else? Because you've seen just about everything. We've done league play, we've done EU and NA combined, we've done split EU NA. How do you feel about how this season was kind of planned, and do you think that's the right way forward whenever all the dust settles?
I think it's really hard because the problem that WCB and WCB is whatever previous arrangements of names have gone through is that it's the season format has always changed. So even as a player, you never honestly truly feel like what is like the best format for the league, because it's just every season it always changes. Like last season, the general idea was right. So if you came first in like challengers, right, you would promote into like the Premier League and have the similar to the format of RLCS and RRS, but that just went completely out the window. And now you've got the same format right now that RLCS has got. And the problem is right now with the current format that WCB has is it's just too long for some teams. Like you're literally playing a month for just 1 or 2 games, and then you're going to have to wait another month to play 1 or 2 more games. And it honestly sucks. Like if you're just sitting there grinding like scrims every single week, and you're just getting to play 1 or 2 months of the league, and it's like, oh well, better luck next month. And yeah, I honestly think that it's something, if the league gets all sorted out and everything right now, I just think there should be a different format for next season, or it should be like more of a reduced thing where teams get more time playing, because it's just not right, I feel, for teams. I think they get really like disowned with it in a way because they deserve to play more and show off their skills.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I think it's difficult because obviously like the RLCS is that format has done a really good job of creating that hype, creating kind of everything that it needed to at the time, right? Like open qualifiers always hype, but when you have a kind of smaller protected scene, I think getting those matches played is more important than, you know, having the big bracket, trying to get the hype and trying to bring that in.
Yeah.
And so Courtney, I wanted to throw this over to you as well, because obviously we're just talking about it. You've actually played in it, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think there's two methods to go for WCB. I do like the once a month events, and here's my reason why. It gives people time to do other things, and it also gives teams enough time to prepare for each event. It really proves if you want to work hard, you can go for it. Do I think it should have been less than a year? I'd say probably 6 months would be a more preferred timetable if there is something like that. But then the other solution I think would have been viable is probably league play. League play, I remember last season, if you couldn't make certain dates, it was very easy to basically like say, oh, I can't play. And they made it really easy and straightforward. They let you like play the game beforehand, and then they'd put the replays up on like Twitch or something. And it just gives people a lot of time, because obviously, as we stated earlier, the end goal for this league is not exactly to be like, oh, like we want these girls to be able to play in LCS and be at the top. And we want to make sure we give time for people to do that.
Yep, And Slumpii for you?
Yeah, I think the thinking behind what the current format is that at least between last season and this season, it's a huge jump. You're going from essentially I think it was a $9,000 tournament in league play, which had a couple of orgs in which weren't that well known, which, you know, the format was kind of, it was a 3-month long season ish.
Yeah.
To now being
Say
a
so,
year
yeah.
long, $50,000 on the line, a ton more teams as well. I'd say people are taking it a lot more seriously. That's something that I've at least noticed. People are taking it a lot more seriously, not just because the money on the line, but also orgs now getting involved, things like that. It's a huge jump, and I think the reason why they went for like one event per month is because they realized that the majority of people, whilst there now are big orgs and stuff getting involved, still have part-time jobs or full-time jobs outside of that and may only be able to reach certain things. Having said that, what Courtney just said, if they did what they did last season and make it easy to move things around, they wouldn't need the 1 per month format. I don't personally hate it. I think that, you know, it gives time for teams to recuperate from like a loss at an event. It gives teams, if you have coaches and things like that, to go through replays and properly try and fix things that have occurred. But would I want to play more regularly in a tournament? 100%. Like if they did it every other week, I'd be fine with that. Personally, just because I find playing in tournaments so fun. That's not coming from like a logical point of view or anything like that. I just find it fun to play in tournaments, and if there's more tournaments, that's great. But I think another reason why they did it is because they were hoping for other events to fill the gap in between each event. So things like Radiant or the PK tournaments, things like that, they were hoping for those to fill the void. And certain events were cropping up, but it wasn't anything big. And that's why I think they were doing it. Why they didn't happen, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to obviously it's a business aspect as well, right? So if they don't have the sponsors, you go out tail kind of tucked in between your legs and you cancel the event. So I totally agree with you that there's pros and cons, right? Because obviously copying the format definitely looks good, and of RLCS because it makes it look like that kind of similar developmental league. Everything along those lines I think is important. At the same time, as a developmental league, like to Courtney's point, for another pro of like league play is you can make up games. It's not really that difficult. You can just be like, hey, we can't play on stream today. It allows the production and the casters to kind of pick the matches that they want to see that day. You can run it all at the same time. You can run it at different times, or you could just pick 3 that day, go ahead and stream those matches and kind of go on from there. So it allows everybody a little bit more flexibility. I think admins, myself, and talent and producers included, a little bit more flexibility if you have that league play. Or you could just have a consistent game every night and try to rock it out that way as well, and just have that constant Twitch time all the time, which would be cool as well. But
yeah, I also think that the current format it might work well for NA, but doesn't particularly work well for EU purely because of the amount of teams we have. Like you find people auto qualifying into main event, getting top 8, because there's some weeks where 2 teams don't turn up, which may not be a big deal in NA, but is a big deal in EU, because our scene, like in EU, hasn't really been given as much love, I'd say, in WCB's history as NA has. And also in general, there's just a lot more NA players within our scene, and more talent to pick from. So I'd say a league play format would probably benefit EU more, just because it would contain, like, you wouldn't just auto qual into main event. Like, there's no real point in our current format in EU because you just auto qualify.
I 100% agree. I mean, the amount of teams in EU has always been an issue, literally since season 1.
It's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
It's gotten a lot better. Like, we went from having last season we had 6 EU teams. They were all in
the top league. I don't remember the name.
They were all in the top league.
They were on the top league. There was no teams that are like in challengers that were EU.
Yeah, they were all in top league. Now we have like 10 or 11 EU teams, even ones that are lower rank, and they are sticking around, which is great, because I think an issue with like lower rank EU teams in the past is that because pretty much every EU team is like GC1, GC2 and above, you don't have any sort of representation for the lower ranks. So when a lower rank EU team does come in, they get completely destroyed and they leave, and it discourages them completely, which is not the point of why we're doing this, but it does happen. It happened in season 3 in EU, and yeah, I feel like a league play format would just be a little bit better, because then if lower ranked players come in, then you could create a challenger league like RRS. That's the whole point.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, I came in during season 4 when we had that split in between Premier League and Challenger League, and just to kind of transition into our next question that I have for you guys, because Challenger League, we saw so much development happening in those kind of lower ranks, right? Like we saw my personal favorite example, like Kia and Cat Jeans in Challenger League. Obviously, Quesadilla was the star of the Bronze Baddies last season. She got MVP for the Challenger League. I don't think anybody really thought otherwise, because she was cracked that entire season. But the way Kia and Cat Jeans kind of evolved, because I believe Cat Jeans came in at Diamond 3, and I think she left that season at Champ 3, like, or pushing GC. And
Yeah.
like, just for me, seeing that, and you see that in one season, and I understand getting discouraged, but sometimes it's good to get reps against people that are going to stomp you, like,
Yeah,
just
I
because you
agree.
can learn, you can grow. And so I kind of want to transition to that going through. Obviously, I've only been here since season 4, and of course, you know, the little part of this season that we had. I wanted to kind of talk to all of you, because obviously y'all have been here basically since day one. Wanted to get your thoughts on just the growth and kind of what you've seen, because you're talking about EU teams specifically. Slumpii, I'm going to start off with you here, but just the growth of the scene in general, the competitiveness, and kind of what this has helped achieve in, you know, the 4.5 seasons that we've had so far.
Yeah, so I started playing in WCB right at the start of season 3, like just before season 3 started. So I haven't been here since day 1, but in terms of the amount of growth I have seen since season 3, it's been like huge, both in terms of the amount of teams we have, but also in terms of like skill level. The skill level the top team in EU was at then is probably what a top 4 team is at now, like in 2 years, maybe even lower than that. Like the skill has gone up massively in Europe. All of the teams on a given day, maybe besides like Williams, like they're a level above everyone else. Let's be real. But everyone else, if you have a good day, you can make it to finals. That's the point where it's gotten to right now. It's so, you know, it's become a free for all, to be honest. Like if a team pops off, if a player pops off, you can make it. That's how much it's developed. Whilst back then in season 3, it was pretty much pre-decided. He was going to come 3rd, he was going to come 4th, he was going to come 5th, he was going to come 6th. I was getting 5th to 6th every single week. I was getting annihilated every single week, right? It was pretty much pre-decided, but we just did it because we wanted to improve anyway, and it was fun. But that's how much, in terms of like development, I've seen from Europe. But also in terms of like attitude, I'd say it's changed a lot as well. Like player mentality, it's gone from being a very like community, doing it mainly for fun type thing, to now being like, oh, if we take this seriously, we could actually make something out of it, and this is a lot of fun, and we want to do this. And people are taking it a lot more seriously, and I think that's partly why EU has become more successful. Scrimming has become a lot more common in EU now. Teams are scrimming each other all the time, which never used to happen. It used to be impossible to get European scrims, like borderline impossible. We'd always scrim against Cat Jam, which was the BS Plus, now Williams roster. But besides that, nobody else was scrim, like at all. Now it's super easy to get scrims against pretty much anyone you want. So that especially kind of shows the attitude change as well, because if teams aren't willing to scrim, then that kind of tells you they're not fussed. But now it's the direct opposite. So
Sure, Courtney, you want to take that away as well?
I mean, I'm only really talking about NA because I obviously, with the regions being split, and EU was so early, I don't really get to watch it. But I don't know. There's still a lot of people in NA that do this for fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's allowed to make their own decision, but there are a lot more people that take it competitively. I mean, I think last season, my old team, because I was on C teams and stuff, we'd scrim 3 times a week. And now that now that I'm on one team entirely, we scrim 10 times a week. Like, we just grind. And I think a lot more teams are doing that. I'm pretty sure So I
Yeah.
would not like you to quote me.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, I mean, last season when it was me, Takara and Chloe, we were scrimming once every other week.
And
if
we were
that.
one of those scrims. Woohoo!
And now we have scrims basically every day. The only day we don't scrim is Sunday. Like that's, and I know that we scrim a lot more than some European teams, but that's, as far as I'm aware, has become like the standard amongst like the top teams of both regions. That's kind of like you scrim every day or you scrim as much as you can. So yeah, like I 100% agree with you there.
Yeah, I mean, we also scrim Williams from time to time. We do server swaps, so one scrim it's NA, one scrim it's EU, and it's honestly so much fun. Like, I love scrimming them. But I'm trying to think of other teams. I even know like the Ron's baddies, like I've heard like they're gonna try to practice more, and like even the people that are doing it for fun, they're like, okay, like if we want org opportunities coming our way or something along those lines, like we gotta play for it. And I think it's building a lot of competitive drive in these women, and I think it's important. Not everybody's gonna want to go for RLCS, and that's okay. But just seeing a bunch of people want to compete and have a good time while doing it, it's like it's inspirational. It makes people want to join the league.
I agree.
Techo, do you have any personal anecdotes of somebody that you've watched like really grow and prosper throughout that space, or?
Like between the both, it's always interesting because I'm always doing both the leagues for admin stuff side, so it's like I constantly see both players developing in that. So like it's honestly it's from the eyes of when you're watching something on the pitch, it's really a unique experience. If you ever get a chance and like you're being an admin for a match, or even watch a match, if you see it from like a bird's eye view, you see everything. And then over the course of those months, you see those players develop and you see that team progressing more. It's just like overall, like really crazy. Like, as for me, specifically last season, I was the coach for Wildfire, and seeing them like do well, like at the really early start, like when the WCBC weeklies came in, that like EU, like we were destroying EU in the early on weeklies, and then towards us coming to mid-season, we weren't doing so well, we were falling off, and then towards the end of the season we were kind of back there but not really. It was a very rough like development, but it was still a good experience. And then now like Sniper, one of the players, is now like on Glump, which like some can may consider as like top 4 in EU now.
Yeah,
Which is like
Sniper's development's been crazy. Like Sniper went from being like, I hope they don't take offense.
like an unknown in a way,
Yeah, being like a complete unknown, one of the least mechanical players out there, to being like, okay, if Sniper's on the ball, she can actually do something with it, you know? Like,
Yeah.
and that's cool to say, because like even though it's annoying for me having to play against them all the time, it makes things more interesting both for the players and for the audience, because one of the biggest complaints, as I said in previous seasons, was the fact that you could kind of just know who was going to win before the match even happened. And don't get me wrong, that sometimes happens in RLCS, but it's a lot less likely. And it's becoming a lot less likely in WCB now, especially in Europe. So
yeah.
I'm happy to see it.
Because the thing that was in season 3, it would literally just be between Cat Jam and Secura Blues, and it was either third or fourth for Go Dark Tourists, and then from below would be like Sammy Smiles, no offense, Slumpii, or like, you know, it's like, but that's generally how it went in EU. And for NA, it was always between like Bang Gang or KCP going back and forth, and maybe Flashes of Brilliance. Those 3 teams, there's kind of like the 3 top, and then below that, it was just not really it. But overall now, I feel like the league as a whole, teams can kind of move up and down anyway. And basically, as somebody said, it's just a free-for-all now at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously following the progression, obviously Bronze Baddies added Top Gun this season, but seeing them get top 4 in NA and a much more competitive
cool.
NA was actually crazy to me. Like the improvement that they had, and obviously Cat Jeans had stepped out and Top Gun had stepped in her place, and I think overall that's a slight bit of an upgrade. I don't mean any offense by that, just, you know, consistency wise. But for them to make top 4 in a place where they were playing in Challengers League last year and didn't make playoffs with one roster change, that's wild to me, to be completely honest with you. And I think it really speaks to how important this is, because that growth, especially at the beginning when people start competing, is exponential, right? it tapers off the more you play, the more you compete, and the closer you get to that highest level, it kind of tapers off. But when you're just first starting out, you learn about the league, you see what's going on. I mean, I think you can see, you know, these women grow 3-4 ranks and you know, the rank ladder wise, or even more, just through one season of WCB. Just getting used to comms, getting used to the game sense, getting used to everything else. And I mean, I think we've all personally seen players that, like you said, Snipes especially, you know, just, hey, couldn't really do much before, but now if she's on the ball, I need to be worried. I need to get it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I'm going to be biased here because she's my teammate. But Alanis came in right at the beginning of season 4, completely unknown, very, very new player. I feel like most people knew she had potential like straight away, but one of the youngest people in the league came in, joined, I think it was circuitry.
Secretary, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they weren't doing so well. Like similar to my first season, it was like 5th to 6th, 7th to 8th, all over the place kind of thing. But the amount of growth Alanis has had, especially since being with us since August, has been crazy. Like ball control, mechanics, her twos rank is like shot up now. It's crazy. She's just way better than she used to be, and I think that's massively down to the league and scrimming all the time and practicing and getting involved in the competitive scene. I agree. Like when you first join, you just shoot up straight away. Is it just, you know, it's just amazing to be involved in, really.
Yeah, and I think it's the most fun getting to be on the outside, kind of looking in, like, you know, being a caster. And I mean, even last year during the Challengers League, we had games that were certified stomps in week 1 that would be up to game 5 matches in league play towards the end of the season, because we did double round robin. So getting to see that and getting to see the personal growth just within a season, I couldn't imagine, you know, with the structure, having the organization backing you, having a coach, things of that nature as well, just helps elevate you that much more as you're going in, and it's exponential growth. So I definitely love seeing it. I love everything that it's brought to the scene so far. And again, it's just been a positive experience for just about everybody involved, right? So
yeah, I agree. I think another thing which has really, really helped has been orgs getting involved, but also those who are like ex-professional players or things like that getting involved with the org. So what we've seen with Williams has been Tadpole directly coaching and helping Williams. And I don't mean this by any offense, but Williams went from being very good to amazing when they had Tadpole. Like they've shot up massively in performance since they've had Tadpole. They were amazing beforehand, and we were able to hit into game 5s all the time. Sadly never beat them, but you know, that's game 5 curse. But like now it's just like they've improved so much. And whilst obviously as someone who competes against them, I don't like that, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of like the bigger picture, I love it, because as soon as you have one team that dominates and has a bunch of new information and tactics from an ex-professional player, the whole scene improves from it. Like everyone, not just EU, but also NA. As soon as you have one team that dominates, it changes the entire like ecosystem of the league. And we've seen that in RLCS. BDS dominated everything and the ecosystem changed. Gale Force and Dignitas dominated for a year. It changed everything. If you have a team that's dominant, it changes everything. So I'm kind of excited to see where that goes and the improvement from there, to be honest.
I think it'll be interesting to see what happens like after a team tops Williams, if there ever comes to that point where a team beats them. That'll be really interesting to see how like the scene develops from there, because I feel like that's what everybody's goal is always as a player or like a team playing against them, is you always want to beat them and be like that team that's known as like the top team out of the whole league.
Like, I mean, in terms of the EU, we've come the closest out of anyone by far, but we're yet to make it to a finals this season and to actually play against them. So at the moment, it's looking like it's going to be someone else. That may change. I hope it changes, but we'll see.
And Courtney, do you have any last words for that one?
I mean, I'm gonna be biased. I mean, one of my teammates has improved like incredibly. Like when Kira joined the league in season 1, I think she was C3, and now like we play high SSL2s all the time. Like it's gotten incredibly better, and I do think there are 2 teams that could beat Williams in the EU. I think there are two. I think Endpoint's one of them. They've taken them to Game 5 in the past. And Galump. Galump is a very new team. I've seen them take them to Game 5s and maybe not WCB specifically, but in other tournaments. And I think, like we talked about earlier, EU is going to be a lot closer than just everybody's expecting.
I agree with that. I think it's most likely if you're going to see Williams be in, I think it's most likely going to be us or Galump. I don't really see anyone else doing it just yet, mainly because of playstyle. I feel like Williams just does it very well against teams that are very chasey and annoying to play against because they just know how to beat them at that level. But I feel like us and Galump have more measured playstyles, which are harder to play against or less maybe less predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting, and regardless of kind of what happens, because it's increasingly likely, of course, that there's going to be a purchase. We're going to see what happens. But even if we get these smaller tournaments and get to see EU in action again or NA in action again, I'm definitely excited to kind of see how these things shake out, because it's really going to kind of determine that motivation factor, or that demotivation factor, I should honestly say, with everything that's been going on in the past month. Kind of seeing where we go from there, and of course seeing how these ladies are kind of handling it, and how y'all are handling it as well, with kind of that demotivation of, hey, we're not going to be able to play for it's suspended operations for a hot minute. So it's gonna be interesting to see kind of who's been able to push through that grind and that demotivation versus anything else. And I'm hoping that we have some events here soon that we can do, or that we can just watch, honestly. As far as getting y'all back into that competitive grind set again.
Yeah, I agree. I think when the news first broke, it was demotivating, I'll be honest. Like, obviously I knew the team would survive regardless of what happens to WCB, so it didn't really affect me too badly, but it was demotivating because everything that we've kind of been the reason why we're on an org in the first place is to play in this league, right? So the league stops. It's kind of like your purpose as a player stops at that point, at least for a short time. So it is demotivating, but I think long term, it doesn't really change much. I think most teams know it doesn't change much, and we'll have some events coming up soon. So
I mean, and there was a huge caster investment going into this season, the promised prize pool jump that was there as well. What are some of the other things that we need to see to, of course, take WCB to the next level? Because obviously money makes things easier. It makes more people want to compete. Getting bigger names out there definitely increases hype and, that kind of promotion that you want to bring to the table. What else do we need to see to take WCB to get up there and kind of start to be discussed with potentially game changers, or, what they do with Overwatch? I'm sorry, I'm blanking so hard right now.
I forgot the name of it as well.
I feel like Psyonix need to have more of an involvement, definitely. I think that's everybody's main thing. They need to have a foot in at least something more than what I think they did in season 3, at least, where they at least rated us a few times, or they at least promoted us at least once on their website, and that was it.
The season 3 involvement was pretty much, here's a prize pool, here's a small chunk in a news article that we put on our website, and we'll raid you once for playoffs per region. That was pretty much it.
Yeah, and have a fancy sticker. Yeah,
and have a fancy thing. It wasn't. It didn't feel like it was Psyonix sponsored. It felt like it was an affiliate of Psyonix that was kind of half-assed done. I don't mean that in any way to anyone at Psyonix, but for the amount of support that we could have gotten that other titles have shown, we didn't get any of that. It felt like the least amount they could possibly do just to kind of keep us quiet, kind of in a way. And I feel like if they're gonna get involved in our scene again, this time do it properly. Whether that be, and I don't mean you have to own the entire league, right? If it's sponsorships, if it's working with orgs to create something, that's still better. If it's even if it's just promoting stuff, showing it in game when we're live, or small things they could do would be far better than what they did in season 3. And I think another thing that could be done is co-ownership. If Psyonix isn't going to get involved, I think we need to see co-ownership from multiple orgs, not just one org. I really hope I'm hoping we don't get just bought out by one org and they just dominate the entire thing. Because whilst that is still better than what we currently have, I think for one, competitive integrity and conflict of interest, if you have multiple orgs owning it, that's better for everyone. Both EU and A orgs and NA orgs owning it. But also, you have better access to sponsors that way. You have way more opportunity for sponsors, and also financial backing if things fall through like they have done now with its current ownership, supposedly. There are backups to that. It makes things way safer, especially in a climate where in 2023, like in terms of it's not broadcasted to be very good for esports this year. So you want to have that safety net for the league if you want to still grow it. And I think that's the perfect way to do it if Sarnix isn't going to step in.
And I know we talked about this earlier in the week, Courtney. You were talking about like kind of other measures that we could, of course, like not only Psyonix getting involved would obviously be a huge boon to it, but you were talking about more on an individual player level, how we can help take this to the next level. And so I know we had discussed this a little bit beforehand, so I just wanted to bring your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of people need to start making content. Well, I don't think it's a need, but I think it would be a very good idea because, in my opinion, the way sponsorships and orgs may start rolling in more is if they see people making content or they see people trying, they see people wanting to work on their brands. More and more people will be interested the more and more people work on their brands. And it doesn't have to be, oh, streaming on Twitch every day, uploading. It could even be as simple as uploading on TikTok and doing little montages of your plays and your clips. I think just trying to build your individual brand, not only will it make you more notable as a person, but also a player, and can help develop a future for you.
Yeah, I agree with that. But also, same goes for things for people who want to get on orgs as well. Like, it will make you infinitely more appealing to organizations if you have some level of like platform somewhere, even if
Exactly.
it's like a couple thousand followers on TikTok or whatever it may be. Like, that actually does help. And me being like, me having a couple thousand on TikTok, a couple thousand on Twitter, I shouldn't be one of the most notable people with those numbers, but people still say that I am. But in reality, I've seen, like, we need to like, me especially, I need to work on it. I think other players should work on it because there's tons of potential. Like, loads of players have tons of potential in terms of what content they could do and building their personal brand. I definitely agree with you. Like, it not only makes you more appealing to orgs, it makes the league more appealing. I mean, if you think about the amount of people who've found out about AppJack or found out about Squishy through YouTube videos and stuff like that and have become fans of them and are now watching them in RLCS because of that, it's probably huge. So there's no reason why that can't happen in WCB as well.
And I think that's a great point as well, right? Just because the sheer fact of, especially with the explosion of growth in areas like TikTok, and we're having creators that, you know, nobody's ever heard of being able to blow up on short form content, which obviously is less investment as well. So, I mean, if you're talking about short form, you can actually take that, you can sit down and, you know, it doesn't take yourself 5 hours to edit a video. You know, you have a 30-second clip, you have a minute clip, it could just be one of us talking, you know, you could upload this to...
Yeah.
You could upload this to your TikTok and be like, hey, we talked about this. There's been a lot of drama going on. Let's turn it into a positive light. And so I completely agree with you there that content's always kind of a strong suit. And just because it's in a weird spot right now with esports, right? Because it's been mainly funded by venture capital and, you know, crypto gains. Now crypto is dead. So it's more and more difficult. Shout out TSM, FTX. But
oh my god,
they're not in our scene, right? So they're not watching this.
Well, they used to be.
Yeah, they did used to be.
This is drama alert now. Oh no.
Yeah. All jokes aside, though, I think the other portion of this that we really need to focus on is, and I've talked with this with individual people, and obviously I myself have a business background, is having something tangible to go behind your org and kind of increase that likelihood that you'll be able to survive even during downturns, I think is the biggest thing. Because I think it's really hard to just rely on sponsorships, because sponsors can come and go You don't want to sit there and you don't want to rely on that, right? So having something tangible, I think kind of like, even though the hypebeast stuff is overplayed, 100 Thieves with their clothing drops, everything else that they're doing over there, I think has been pretty massive, to be completely honest with you, because it's allowed them to fund themselves just a little bit more through. They don't have to rely on that VC money dropping all the time. They're able to kind of self-fund and get closer to that profitability line more and more. And I think that's something that's also super important. So building your brand and establishing that and being able to, you know, sell tangible goods even, I think is healthy for the long term of the esport.
I think more orgs are going in that direction of like building a brand that they can sell clothing with, rather than building an esports brand first and then selling the clothing. I think people are doing it the other way now, or a lot more are starting to do it the other way first. But also going back to like the player thing, you won't be able to play competitively forever. Like most competitive players, especially in Rocket League, may only stay at the top for a year or two, maybe 2, 3, 4 years. Obviously, it's a little bit different in the women's scene. That's the same for every title. Like women's scene players tend to stay around for a lot longer because there's less players in general. But I think if you create a brand for yourself and something you can build off of after your career ends, that's when it becomes very, very good, because you're not going to be living off your player's salary forever. Like that's not going to be a thing that happens. So you got to prepare for what comes after that. And if you don't want to stay in esports, that's fine. Obviously, not everyone has to create a brand and do that. But if you do, I think that is the best way to do it. So
I kind of want to go back to what we were talking to earlier as well with that multi-org investment. I think, like you said, you think that's the best road forward if Psyonix isn't directly involved, and I got to agree with you. It clears up conflict of interest issues. It clears up cash flow issues. It clears up the amount of sponsors that you can bring in as well, like you said. I really think that's the path forward, and I hope that's something that these orgs are considering doing, and they've been in talks with each other. Because we've talked about this, right? Like the WCB is a name, and for brands that are going to come in, or orgs that are going to come in and try to do this, it's always easier to buy an established name than it is to create your own, just financial risk wise, period. So especially with the slight downturn that we've seen as far as esports economy, I could see somebody not wanting to start a competitor right now to WCB just because the opportunity to purchase it is out in the open right now. So you're buying an established brand, already has followers, already has content, already has some backing behind it. I think that's extremely likely. And like you said, if you get multiple orgs in it, you get the chance to actually form kind of a coalition that almost serves the players better as well, because y'all will have more bargaining power, because you're not answering just to one person. You have to answer to 4 different people, and they might have different ideas. And I think just the collaborative process of being able to own and operate a league like that is much more vital than being able to just do it to one person and have one person answer for everything.
yeah, I agree. I also think that if you have multiple like orgs owning it, especially the ones that are currently involved in WCB owning it, I think you massively increase your chances of Psyonix getting involved if you have the names that are currently involved in our scene owning it, because every RCS level org has a contact with Psyonix. That is something that every org has, and it massively increases the chances of them getting involved in some way, because the more they see orgs getting involved in our scene, the more they can't ignore it. Like, I know it sounds weird, but they can't ignore it if you have the likes of Genji, Misfits, Luminosity, Endpoint, Williams, and more getting involved. Like, they can. So, especially if they're constantly promoting it at the same time that they're promoting their RCS games, they're constantly promoting it on the same drops. You're having the women's rosters involved in the same announcements. It's hard to ignore. So, I feel like that is the play, having multiple orgs owning it, because there's very few downsides, I feel like. Maybe I'm wrong, but...
No, I agree with you, Slumpii. I feel like that Psyonix just can't ignore it. Like, the more orgs that get involved, and it helps out the scene more in general. It's like, literally, like, you'll be knocking a Psyonix door constantly, and the knocking's getting louder for every org that joins, and eventually they just can't ignore it, or it just looks really silly on their end. And I still think it looks silly that the fact that you have this scale of like a prize pool, and if it's actually there, then it kind of looks really weird from outside perspective. Like, why Psyonix not actually sponsoring the league or like doing anything?
Yeah.
It makes no
50,000.
sense.
without any Sarnix involvement, has to be one of the biggest in Rocket League history without any sort of Sarnix like sponsorship or anything.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, E-League I think was Sarnix sponsored. I know Gfinity I think was possibly. I may be wrong on that one, but there are a ton of big Sarnix sponsored tournaments. There are very few, at least from off the top of my head, that aren't Saudi Arabian tournaments. There's loads of huge tournaments over there, but besides that, I can't think of any tournament that comes even close to the scale that we have that hasn't had some like hand in from Sarnix, and I think that is a bit weird that they haven't done that. But yeah, I agree.
You have any thoughts on that one as well, Courtney? Is that kind of your
I
ideal, or are
mean,
you thinking? I mean,
yeah,
you're allowed to
no.
have an opposing opinion. That's why we're all here. That's why we're all talking, right?
I'm trying to like hit it in my brain what everybody was saying. You know, it's a lot of information, but I mean, I do think there needs to be more orgs and ownership. The more people, the better, I guess is the best way for me to put it. The more people, the better from both regions. Who knows if we get to expand South America, OCE, like,
Oh.
you
I
know?
mean, we know there's a South American like women's scene.
Yeah,
Like
OCE has one as well. Yeah.
Yeah, OC has one as well. Like they do exist. They're obviously like 6 maybe teams, 8 teams, maybe. I don't know the extent to which I would have to
Yeah.
ask. But I would love to see them getting involved. And if we can have a LAN one day, oh, I would love to have a LAN one day. I mean, seeing what happened with Game Changers and seeing how much of a success that was, that changed my view a lot because
Yeah.
that kind of broke esports for a day or two because the people realized that oh, this can actually be like a thing that people can do. Like this is legit. It isn't just an online thing that women do and then they become good enough and they leave and they join main teams. No, they're holding LANs now, international LANs, not just Valorant, but ESL Impact and CS. They're going to all the DreamHack arenas, playing in front of a crowd. Like that's amazing. Let us do that. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah, if I got to hug Slump Dog in person, that would make my
we
year.
haven't had a hug yet. Well, come
It's
on.
pretty messed up. Like it's time to step up.
Yeah, come on, Sarnix, come on, please.
And not only that, and you mentioned like, hey, they did it right, but Game Changers was holding 150, 200,000 viewers during that time as well.
Crazy.
It was
Crazy.
huge. You had Techo streaming it. It was massive, right? And so and they had all the names, they had all the investment, and they put it out there, and they took a leap, right? Because nothing has really been seen on the publisher side on that scale. As far as an international LAN with 4 different leagues feeding into one, and obviously that's something that we can do here too. There's no reason we can't. So I mean, let me hit the lotto and I'll run it. I don't care. I just don't have
Good investment.
I just don't have that kind of functional cash flow right now, unfortunately. But I would love to see it. Obviously,
I think.
Go ahead. Sorry
Sorry to cut you off.
You're good.
I think one of the craziest things to come out of that, and one of the best things, is the fact that certain players and certain names have come out that will inspire other women, not just in Valorant but in other games too. People like Mimi, people like Alexis, like those names, they went crazy in that tournament. They popped off, and it's going to inspire other women to getting involved. And I think that's one of the best outcomes possible from tournaments like that. That's one of the big reasons why it's happening, is to get more people involved. It's not something that's often talked about, but like if you're seeing someone doing that, it is genuinely inspiring. So yeah, like if more LANs happen in more titles, that just amplifies that, And
the fact that it can be successful, and it already has, with kind of an initial trial run. Obviously COVID kind of shut everything down for 2 years, kind of left everybody in an awkward spot, right? Because we were all playing online even for majors and all that stuff. So I'm happy that we have LANs back, but we need to kind of bring that focus, and I think that's one way to kind of build hype around it as well. That would be extremely successful.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I mean, that is all we had for documented questions, of course. But I wanted to go ahead and throw out the chat. Obviously, Courtney, Slumpii, Techo, you've been involved with the scene for a long time. So if anybody has questions for any of them, throw them in chat. Obviously, we'll be screening them. But throw anything out in chat that you think we should talk about, that you think maybe we didn't hit as far as positivity-wise, kind of what we're looking for wise, and why we can be... Because this is already a successful scene. It's already grown massively from season 1 to now, right? It has taken 4 years total for this to get to the point that it's at, where we're actually able to hold Swiss in NA and get darn close to it in the EU, right? Whereas before we had 6 teams in EU total.
Yeah.
And we've almost doubled that.
It sounds weird, but I almost feel like this was our first like proper season. I know it may sound crazy, but like, if it genuinely felt like this was a fresh start for everyone. Maybe I could be wrong. I don't know if Courtney agrees with me on this, but season 1 and 2, which I went involved with, at least from what I've been told, were more community focused. Season 3 was kind of like that hybrid where they tried to pull it into competitiveness, but it was still very community focused. Season 4 was kind of like the first time, but the leagues were still integrated, like the regions were still integrated. This time, regions separated, prize pool, backing, all's getting involved. It kind of felt like our first shot, despite it being 4 years into our scene, which sounds crazy, but it's sad that it had to like happen like this. But if this happens and kept continuing, I just see the growth happening exponentially.
Yeah, I mean, I like to comment on this. I mean, literally when I started playing, it was like I said, I would if I was competing at the time, I'd play on 2 different teams. WCB was more of a fun thing for me. It was more of a laid back, even if we were practicing. And now it's like, all right, let's do this classic Fisher intro. Like, it's time.
No maidens, you mean?
No.
That's messed up.
Hey man, I mean, they hosted a dating advice show yesterday. I can't let that slide. Him and Asfura giving advice to people.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That ain't it, Chief. I'm sorry. That's not.
2 people who have no riz whatsoever. I'm
Dude,
sorry.
can we get GC on here for a minute just to roast them? I would really appreciate that.
She would love that.
Oh my god, I know.
No, I love Fisher and Fury. I'm sorry.
Oh no, they're great.
carry
They're
on,
absolutely great. But
yeah, I mean, now I'm like, all right, it's time to grind. I mean, my hours are higher than they've ever been. I'm with the team that I love with all my heart and ready to make some memories, and it feels like this is the time.
yeah, I mean, I just obviously Daz got added for Gen G, but y'all were there as well for the whole promotional shoot for the Rocket League team. I think that's awesome. So I mean, it's actually phenomenal that y'all are starting to be included in that, you know, hype videos, all of the kind of things of that nature as well. And I think that's kind of where these orgs need to start trending as well. Like, I know that it's not happening right now, but hey, get them promoted. Maybe y'all stream a little bit. Maybe y'all do stream scrims, just something to kind of tide us over during this gap. Because as a caster, I'm going crazy right now, not being able to, you know,
Yeah.
grow with you guys and continue to watch, you know, how y'all are improving and everything like that. Because that's been my favorite part of all this. So. Have one in chat. So what are the links y'all can go in order to promote on your own? Like, because obviously CRL and CCA started from somewhere, right? So do we have any coalitions that maybe we could reach out to kind of promote what we're doing as well?
The only coalition thing that I know was like, I think there was like someone did a Twitter thing a while back or something like that, and it never really, like, it was more like an association thing or something outside of that.
You talking about Widows Women in Rocket League thing?
No, it was
Okay.
like a women's Rocket League one. There was not like women in RL, it was something different.
Okay.
I can't remember that.
Dude, you're making me think so hard. Oh, I'm
My
stumped.
memory.
I think Takara was the one that did it. I can't actually
Oh,
remember.
oh my god, oh my god, oh my
radio.
god, it's the Union.
Oh.
It was the Women's Rocket League Players Association.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm so
Yeah, so-
smart.
Nice. The WRLPA.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so Takara created like a players association thing. Essentially so players can come together and ask questions about like if they've never been in an org before, they can ask questions about, you know, without leaking information that would get them in trouble or things like that. But talking about things like contracts or what roughly everyone else is potentially earning, so they know what to ask for, so they can ask for advice as well. Because if you're a player, and this happens a lot in the women's scene, sadly, you're a player, you come into our scene and you get picked up by a org, but in reality it's not an org, it's like a club, and they give you like a jersey and you may not even get the jersey and you don't really get paid.
Yeah.
Right? That's not an org.
No.
And people need to. Sadly, it happens everywhere. It happens a lot in women's Rocket League, and I think people need to get educated about that more, but also have a place where people can ask questions, because that is important. Like, not everyone will know what to do with contracts and stuff. Like, we didn't when we first did it. So that's definitely important. In terms of like connections we can make, I mean, I've had ideas about ways you could help integrate the women's scene into higher level tournaments, but I don't know if that's what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, anything that we can do to kind of get the shout out and get that continue going, right? Because
I think, yeah,
at the end of the day, we have basically a blank slate that we get to work with, right? And so all the orgs will have a say in whoever the new owners or the group of owners or Psyonix or anybody else who decides to purchase this option, right? Or, you know, if we're forming something brand new, I think it's going to be important to have the players, you know, communicate with the orgs and kind of get that out there on what's kind of expected as far as community engagement, everything else that goes into it, right? Because we want this to grow, we want this to thrive, and I think this is a good time because we essentially have a blank slate regardless of what goes on.
Yeah, so I had an idea about integrating like top level. It kind of mainly applies to EU because I'll explain why, but in EU we have loads of regional tournaments. So Italy have their own regional tournament, Portugal have their own regional tournament, France, we have Benelux tournaments. You have Norwegian, Danish, etc. Pretty much every country in Europe has their own regional tournament except the UK. I don't know why. Actually, no, Scotland has one. I take it back. But besides that, like, you know, every country has their own tournament, and I think at the end of the year they come together to play in like a European like Masters tournament. If we created a similar format to that, where you invite the top like bubble teams who get to the top of their national league, and do a similar thing to that, but also invite two of the top women's teams, European women's teams, and invite them to that. That provides another avenue where you can play against the top level teams. And I think that would be a great way to do it. You integrating women's teams into a path that helps them play against top level teams like straight away. Because there is some like low RLCS players who play in tournaments like that. And you have like Nitro League, which is very stacked. Like the German league is very, very stacked. So that could be a cool way to get them integrated more, especially with EU. Would help potentially with EU growth as well, because that's obviously lacking in comparison to NA growth. So that could help. I also think things like Radiant promotes a lot of other like titles, Valorant and CS mainly. I know they've done Overwatch recently as well. I think having them doing more Rocket League stuff will promote the women's scene in Rocket League a lot, because a lot of people still don't know about it. Like outside of Rocket League, you might not even know WCB even exists.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the comments on like John's and Hoodie's recent video they did with Shift. A lot of the comments were like, "I didn't even know this league existed," and I think promotion is one of the biggest issues actually that we have.
Yeah.
And I think if Psyonix were to get on board, that would be one of their biggest things that they need to do, is like promote the league a lot more. Like even if they don't give us monetary help, promoting the league is one of the biggest things they could do.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. This is basically not a cry for help, but like, hey, yo, Psyonix, like, look at every other esport. Look how they're succeeding with their women's scene. Throw us a bone.
Yeah.
That's it.
It wouldn't take much. Like, it really wouldn't.
No.
Like, posting us here and there, or, you know, retweeting stuff on Twitter would help a lot. Even, like, adding a WCB is live thing. I know they probably would never do that in game, but that's a long shot. But if they did that, that would be cool. Rating us more often. Like, if they rated it, even if it was from one of the minor regions, like when OCE was live, they rated someone. When Sam was live, they rated someone. Like, you know, that would be great too. And also, I think, and they're starting to do this a lot more now, is platforming more women in Rocket League in general. I know they've been doing it a lot more with Widow and with Hercules as well. Getting Hercules on the desk for RLCS was huge. And that's awesome. So there's other ways you can do it. But yeah, Psyonix, come on. Come on, let's do it.
And Tech, Courtney, y'all have anything else to add?
Slumpi's pretty smart. She got that one.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with
So that
that.
was like a ramble then. I just went on for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this, right? So, I definitely think this is the time where, you know, y'all as players need to kind of, especially players that are under organizations, y'all need to start speaking together to get an idea of how you want this to be successful in the future as well, and just kind of like pseudo unionize real quick, because we have a blank slate. Even if this gets purchased, it doesn't mean the format's staying the same. Doesn't mean, you know, doesn't mean that anything else is happening minus, you know, the back pay. Essentially, they could start a whole new season right off this, right? So change the name, they can do whatever they want with it. It'll be their intellectual property. So I think it's a really good time to go ahead and communicate with each other and kind of see what y'all want to see for this, so collectively y'all can all go and of course talk to those orgs, talk to everybody else, and just try to get some bargaining power essentially for yourselves as we kind of hit this small downturn, hopefully just a small bump in the road to an even brighter future. So
yeah, I think another thing which could be really, really cool to do is like WCB players collaborating with each other on content, but also collaborating with content creators, especially women who are content creators within Rocket League. I think that would be really, really cool to see, because one of the biggest things as to why like the current content creation scene in Rocket League is so big is because you would have people like John Sandman playing with Sizz and Rizzo when they were both pro. And it's like, if we could kind of replicate that and have people who are, you know, in the WCB scene playing with content creators, that would be really cool, and it would platform individual players way more and give our scene a lot more attention than what it currently has. That's a way that you could get that's a way that you could do it without Sarnix even being in the picture.
yeah, I mean, John might be a good contact, obviously, because they did the whole breakdown about what was going on, and obviously we're kind of talking about how we can make this grow versus they were talking about the situation, which obviously isn't positive in any way. So that's why I honestly didn't really want to talk about it today. So
Yeah.
just to be completely honest, because I don't think it's constructive at this point. Everybody kind of knows both sides of the story, and they can make their own decisions. I don't think I'm going to convince anybody otherwise or change their minds. So that's why we didn't touch that at all today either. So
yeah, it's up to the orgs, you know.
Yeah.
It's up to them. They have the money, they have the power to change things. So
I just play Rocket League and sit in my chair and
Yeah, we just
my ranked
vibe.
games.
we just sit here and vibe and just hope for the
Yeah,
best. Like, you
yeah.
know?
I mean, that's all we really can do right now, right? So, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
I mean,
obviously
yeah,
things
it's-
ongoing, but there's a ton of very smart people in this league. There's a ton of very smart people around the league that have worked with the league as well. And I know that something could be successful. And the biggest part about this discussion is women's Rocket League will exist whether women's carball exists or not. Period. End of discussion.
Yep.
Realest thing you've ever said.
Because like at the end of the day, no, like the scene is just going to survive no matter what, and I think it will just carry on and grow even more, even without WCB if it's not there. But like I think us being here and talking about everything in a more positive light has been really good.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just Twitter can be a cesspool of negativity sometimes. So let's get some clips. Let's get our favorite moments. Let's get our ideas. Let's blast them out there, and let's try to be positive and talk about how we can be constructive and getting over this hump. And really, for me, that's it. And I mean, we could talk about, you know, players getting together and spoon feed the orgs and dangling the carrot. I think that's the next big step for y'all. Obviously, for us in the talent scene, we can't really do anything. We're just in sit here and wait mode right now to see.
Yeah, I think the players have a little bit more power to try and change things than the talent, the casters and broadcast team does. Because I mean, I feel bad because, like, you know, you had loads of stuff planned and obviously didn't happen. But like I think with players, you know, if players have the funds, they could host their own one-off invitationals with orgs. I know it wasn't a women's tournament, but Sarak from Raw hosted a extra mode tournament recently with Raw. That's awesome. Let's have more of that. Like, if we could have more of that, but women's scene tournaments, that would be amazing. Like, if individual players went to their orgs and went, hey, is there any chance you could do this? Even if it's a very small prize pool, it's a one-off thing. It's at least something, you know? And obviously there are things being worked on and things that aren't public, tournaments that aren't public, and I can't say, but things are being worked on. So even if WCB is gone for ages, there are things that will happen. So I think that's the biggest thing to take away.
Yeah, if it's locked down in the basement and held hostage until somebody pays enough for it as an intellectual property.
Pretty much. Yeah, I mean, I guess one option, and it isn't obviously a good option in general, because I would rather this not happen, but you could technically just create a replica league, take all the current point standings of both regions and everything, because the players and orgs would just move to a different league if a new league started before WCB restarted.
Yeah.
Add a prize pool and just call it something different, have different assets and everything. Because essentially you've created the same league at that point, recreate the Discord, invite everyone who was currently playing. You could technically do that. Do I advise it? Probably not. But you could do that if someone wanted to just create a basically brand new WCB without it being called WCB. You could do that. Because it would be a continuation of what's currently going on, just under a different name.
Yep. I completely agree. And so, I mean, I think we've hit a point where we pretty much discussed everything that we wanted to discuss today. So I'm just going to go ahead. We're going to go clockwise again. So Courtney, we're going to start with you. Just final thoughts, any words, any shout outs, anything that you want to give out. And obviously, I want to thank everybody that is here in chat. Obviously, everybody as well that joined me on the panel today, just to have this discussion and try to put all of this in a more positive light. So Courtney, the floor is yours.
Just wanted to say thank you for having me. This has been fun. I've had a good time. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I'm down to do this again in future. If we ever wanted to, do an update one, I'd be happy to.
Wait, that'd be big.
Yeah, we could do an update one. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Especially if something like really positive happens, then that would be awesome. Even if it's not WCB related, that'd be cool. I appreciate everyone in chat hanging out. And yeah, let's just hope for the best and hope WCB sorts itself out.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Virginia, for hosting this. It's been really cool. I like having Slumpii here and Courtney talking along in that and just discussing things out. It's been really cool. And as Slumpii says, maybe we can do an updated one in the future. It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm actually planning on this to kind of be an ongoing series, or I guess a little one, obviously, as we kind of have this downturn, right, with Women's Rocket League, just because of what's happened with WCB. So with that being said, I'm planning on getting some more talent in here, specifically talent that have worked in those other esports that have been successful within women's leagues, and kind of talk to them and see all those things that made them successful and what we can kind of take from them and try to implement that into what's going on right now. And I know half of that is publisher support, so we're going to kind of try to not beat a dead horse with that, of course. But I definitely want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank everybody else for being here as well. So if y'all had anything that you thought you said was great, I mean, go back, clip it, share it on Twitter, blow it up on TikTok. Let's get that positivity going. And I think, honestly, at the end of the day, women's cardball will never die. But it doesn't have to be that name, doesn't have to be whatever. But this scene will never die. These people have been here. They've been entrenched. They've been grinding. They deserve this opportunity, and we're going to make sure it happens one way or another. So with that being said, I want to thank you all once again. Have a wonderful night. We're going to hit a raid. So Techo, Courtney, Slumpii, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
It's been so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and hit a raid real quick just to get it on out. So I'm going to go ahead and raid one of my fellow WCB casters just to make this easy. And we are going to throw it over to Lemon Kiwi. She is a professional Overwatch caster. She also casted with me on WCB. So we're going to go ahead and throw it that way. I just want to say once again, thank you so much for stopping by. It's been a ton of fun getting to chat about this. And obviously, it's something that's pertinent to my situation as well, because I casted for WCB. But I think this is an opportunity that we can take to learn and grow and somehow push the women's scene forward. So again, thank you, everybody, for stopping by. It's been a ton of fun. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Stick around for the raid over to Lemon. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.